Welcome to episode 20 of Ntseki Discussions. I'm your host, AB Basson. In this week's episode, I'm joined by South African football journalist Velile Mnyandu. After another failed qualifying campaign, what next for Bafana Bafana? Following defeat in Sudan, we'll miss out on another Afcon tournament. Vision 2022, mere fairy tale. Velile, thanks for joining me on Ntseki Discussions once again. The main topic of conversation will be Bafana Bafana. Obviously, we're all distraught following their, elimination from qualification and their failure to qualify for Cameroon next year. In a nutshell, what are your thoughts on our qualifying campaign? And, what did you make of our performance in Sudan earlier this week?
Yeah, well, I think very disappointing, AB. Thanks for the opportunity again to invite me to your podcast. I think very disappointing, especially in the sense that this is a 24-team Afcon, and when a country like South Africa can't even make a 24-team Afcon, you start to wonder if what's next. I know that previously we've had challenges, but those challenges were to qualify for the 16-team Afcon, where there are a number of other big guns who would miss out. But we were in Cairo, in Egypt, 2 years ago, and we ended up as one of the top 8 teams there. Mm. So from being a top 8 team on the continent to failing to be amongst top 24 teams 2 years later, it's disappointing. I know there are a lot of excuses that have been given, a lot of things, some of them for me, they don't really make sense because it's not only us that are affected. In fact, if I am to talk about COVID-19 affected, if you look, let's look at the Ghana game, for instance. Yes. Ghana had 5 debutants against Bafana Bafana. And Ghana, they rarely feature locally based players in their starting lineup in official A matches. Yeah. But in this situation, Ghana had 4 locally based players in that starting lineup, and 5 debutants, in total. So that is a team that has been hugely affected by COVID-19. So COVID-19 has affected everyone, and for me, this is where I have to say it's just disappointing that we're not going to the Afcon, and I'm just short of ways of expressing it.
Yeah, I think everyone feels like that, and especially watching the game against Sudan, conceding so early and then conceding another on the transition. I know Molefi Ntseki said it in the build-up to the game that he was expecting, them to come at us and we could maybe exploit them on the transition, on the counter-attack. And how ironic that we were the ones punished on the counter-attack. What do you think went wrong in Khartoum and Omdurman? What do you think we did wrong in that match? Do you think our approach was, I know it's a difficult place to play in and people talk about the humidity, et cetera, but you come to expect these things when playing on the African continent, surely.
I think if you look at Sudan and you look at how they got to their 12 points, you will see that Sudan, they won all their home matches, 100% winning record. And I think we've seen it even from the CAF interclub competitions. You want to qualify, win your home matches. And that's what Sudan did. Yes, we will talk about the humidity. We'll talk about the ground there. We'll talk about how it's difficult for teams to come out of Sudan. But if we talk about humidity, I remember in 2014, we went to Sudan with Bafana Bafana. It was Sheikh's first game. He won 3-0 in the same venue,
Sure.
And under similar conditions, and so it's not something that's difficult to achieve. But I think I must also say that it was proven when Sudan beat Ghana that they're not an easy team to beat at home. So it means that Bafana Bafana should have won their game against Ghana at home. Also to go to that game with a bit of fear for Sudan. That even a win, just a win, it won't be enough. But I think also conceding early also did affect us, and maybe especially playing in transitions, because I look at how we considered the second goal. Before we considered the second goal, there were moments where I was really not happy with how we were not compact between the midfield and the defense, and you could see that they're coming at us, and the lines were just too big. There was not compactness in how we're dealing with them, and they had a plan. And you look at their physical strength on the day, and at some stage I was wondering if did we come here really ready for this physical the battle, So and I know that people have also been having a lot of things to say. No, but you know what? We lack overseas-based players. We don't have enough players based overseas. We lost to a Sudanese team that only had 2 players playing outside Sudan.
True. One damning thing for me that was quite concerning, and I know the game wasn't picked up by SuperSport because of obviously the deal that CAF have with a different broadcaster. But you could still stream the game live. But during the game, most people were watching the Formula One. I know some were switching over to Bafana Bafana afterwards, but as a country, that it felt to me like people had already lost hope with Bafana Bafana. Do you feel that's a damning statement on the national team? And how do we get the pride back and get people watching the country again?
It's only through winning. AB. Remember how people felt about Bafana Bafana 2 years ago in Egypt, the way we started, lackluster performances against Cote d'Ivoire, maybe not really convincing out of the group stages. But also, I think if you look back to how we came out of the group and went on to beat the host Egypt, you could see what did to the nation. People started to believe, and this is the Bafana that we've seen previously, that would go to a tournament and compete and advance to the next stage, and people rally behind the team, because no one will ignore a winning team, and that's why for me this one is very disappointing. We've seen teams like Gambia, we've seen Comoros, we've seen Ethiopia today, we've seen my word, a number of teams that have qualified. We've seen Malawi, now Sudan, teams that have qualified to this Afcon. Mauritania returning to the Afcon, So you count all those teams and you look at where our football is, especially domestically, for us not to be amongst those teams, it's a huge indictment in our football. Right now, we'll be going to the World Cup qualifiers in June. We're in the same group with the same Ghana. We're in the same group with Zimbabwe, our neighbors. We're in the same group with Ethiopia, and all those teams are going to the Afcon.
Yeah. I was about to get to that question. You actually stole the words out of my mouth. All 3 of those teams have qualified for Afcon. They'll be in our group for the qualifiers. We talk about Vision 2022. I mean, how do we get past this group to get onto Qatar and next year? The World Cup's just around the corner. How do we change, from not making Afcon to making the World Cup? How do we get that right?
I have to say to you, unfortunately, I'm not really positive about the way forward. I'm not really positive because I don't know what plan the FA has going forward. As you know, there's a press conference tomorrow where they will be looking back and giving the feedback on this qualification campaign. But I'm not expecting much from that press conference, I just feel that technically we lack a vision. Technically, we seriously lack a vision. Yes, I'm looking forward to we were playing in the Olympics, but Olympics is not the World Cup. Olympics is not the Afcon. It's still a junior competition, your football will always be judged by what the senior team does. And in this case, you know that the World Cup qualifiers will start in June and finish before the Afcon starts, because they finish in November. But you cannot tell me that if we cannot make a 24-team Afcon, that will be one of the top 5 teams going to the World Cup.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. Obviously, there'll be a lot of introspection, and I don't really like what ifs in football. But if you look back at the squad that Molefi Ntseki chose for games against Ghana and Sudan, a lot of people think that there were some players that should have been in the squad that weren't. We'll see. You spoke about earlier about the strength of our domestic league and how good Sundowns are doing, and Pirates have had positive results on the continent of late. Do you feel there's a few players that he should have had in the squad that weren't there? And obviously it's easy to look in reflection and say, yes, that person should have been there. But was there a few names that maybe stood out for you that should have really been on the plane to Sudan?
For me, out of the players who are missing, if you really look at it, the players that we couldn't get who were selected, Bongani Zungu, Keegan Dolly, Dean Furman, and Tulani Serrero. And to be fair, Keegan has not really been playing for Montpellier. Yes, Zungu was one player that I would say we're missing. I'm not really sure about Dean Furman because he's also dropped down a bit now. We know what he can give you. We know that he's a workaholic. But Tulani Serrero also has not been in the picture for that much, but he's doing very well for his club. So we cannot really say we're really missing those players, understand? Especially judging by the kind of opposition that we're up against as well, But I think for me, some of the players that I feel that we're really missing, Lebohang Motiba up front, he's been out injured for a very long time. But I think now going forward, the time has come for Coach Ntseki, or whoever is gonna continue with the team. The time has come to refresh the team properly, and I know that the priority is being given to the Olympics, but we need to see those players who are in the under 23 who've been to the under 20 to the World Cup, under 20 World Cup, and who've qualified for the Olympics. We see Victor Osimhen, we'll see Chukwueze playing for the Nigerian Super Eagles. That's what we want to see, even with our boys. People will come and show some hunger. So for me, I think the team needs to be transformed now.
You touched on Ntseki, and if he keeps his job or not, we'll find out later this week. Do you think it's a bit naive blaming him and solely him for the failures of this Afcon campaign? Like we mentioned before the podcast started, we've missed out on a few Afcons now in the past decade, and frankly, for a country like South Africa with the domestic league that we've got, and I think we pride ourselves and we hold ourselves at a greater standard. Do you think it's naive to blame him? Do you think there should be introspection at a deeper level at Safa House?
No, I think whoever just blames Coach Ntseki only is missing the point. As I was saying here, the biggest problem facing Safa and in fact South African football entirely is a lack of technical vision. If you look at even at PSL club level, you look at it, at some clubs, the technical decisions that get taken, the recruitment of coaches, the recruitment of players, all of those things. You ask is there a standardized approach? Is there a formula that's being followed? are there standards that are being set to say if a coach with a D license can be coaching international players? Is that something acceptable? Being trained week in, week out, and those same players must go and play for the national team. You understand those things? Safa, yes, I know that we pride ourselves in having qualified for under 17, under 20 tournaments, and now even the Olympics. But was that by design or by accident? What is the clear technical vision? And I'm basing this on some of my conversations with some of the junior national team coaches who've complained in the past about not having things like just a mere camp. Even in terms of, we always talk about going to Europe to monitor players, but I don't think there's been a Bafana coach in the last 2 years who's been overseas to monitor our talent overseas. And I was sharing something that there's a picture that interested me last week. A technical director of the Ghanaian Football Association, he was on the ground with the president of the FA. They were at the training session, I think, for 2 days in succession. I haven't seen even our acting technical director around our national teams. You understand?
Yeah.
So, in fact, we don't have a technical director currently. I know that the FA is going through a phase of restructuring. But if I can look at the standards, even with the previous technical director, maybe I think the last time I could see a proper technical director who had vision at SAFA was Sudan, and that's more than 7 years ago.
You spoke about the transition between, from youth level to senior level and, qualifying for these tournaments, if it's by luck or by judgment. If I'm just going through, names in my head, former under 20 captains, you think of Tertius Malepe, you think of Ayo Belela. You go through all these names, you think of Kanisa Mayo, who's obviously now doing well at Richards Bay. He was a star at youth level, but we seem to struggle to get, players from youth level that are great at that level to be a star at senior level. How do we cross that bridge and get over that hurdle?
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying with all the resources that we have locally, commercially off the field, we don't seem to have a proper plan for the core business of football, which is on the pitch. You know what I mean? There are a lot of things that when I look at some other countries on the continent that are not well resourced as we are, but you can see the technical vision from them, in terms of proper scouting, also just following the processes. There's just a lot of things for me. I love what the MDC has done in recent years for our game, but in terms of quality, are we really getting quality out of it? I'm not sure. And when I mean quality, AB, I mean players. Right now, we talk about not producing enough players to go and play in Europe and break into the top leagues. What is the plan? What is the technical plan? What is the plan? And for me, there's always talk of how to revive schools football as well. But we know that for the past 5 years or so, schools football has been politicized, and given a chance. We've had even Dr. Patrice Motsepe talking about this at CAF, that he wants to revive schools football. Given a chance, it can work for us, because the talent is there. But I think we've gone for the past few years now. There's no action around that space, So we love football. We love football, and when we see other things, because we're not talking about things that we don't know, we see other things happening in other countries that are not well resourced like us. They've got nothing, but they just know that there's a technical director, and this technical director here, he's gonna move, and he's got maybe 10 national scouts, and from there. They identify players from there, and then those players they move from there. You know all those things. You don't have a situation where the scouting is done by agents. Where the real talent now is not coming up because now the scouting has been outsourced to agents, and this is a problem. And for me, I also disagree when people say. The problem is when our players are remaining here at home. We must have that equal balance, because to have a strong football industry in the country, the league should also be stronger. That's why we have players who come back from Belgium and they get paid 3 times what they are getting in Belgium. But there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But equally, our structures, technically, they must be the best. They must be the best. There must be skilled coaches, and also there must be clear proper processes. Because currently the problem is that you have 1 or 2 or 3 PSL clubs with clear structures and processes, and then you have the rest with nothing.
Yeah.
Or they differ a lot. There's nothing that is standardized, and that's where you hope that something like club licensing will come and help, but it's not really happening.
Yeah, I actually had a good chat with KB about club licensing, and it's just a very interesting topic, and I think we've discussed this before as well. But I'd just like to quickly touch on Gambia and Comoros. You talk about the disparity between resources, and you think a nation like South Africa should be qualifying for Afcon, but then you look at Comoros and Gambia and you think, how the hell did they get there? Comoros, Amir Abdu was appointed the head coach in 2014. He's obviously had a 7-year project and qualified them. Their story is just, remarkable. Just how amazing is it for them? And also Gambia, looking at their influence and their players playing in Europe, they've got a lot of exciting talent coming through, especially in Italy. Just for those who don't know and not so in touch with the African game, how big of a deal is it that Gambia and Comoros will be at Afcon next year?
I've been following Comoros a lot because they've been playing in the COSAFA Cup, and especially with their coach, and it's a beautiful story, that one of Comoros. And if you remember, there's a team, I think they played Kaizer Chiefs a few years ago in the CAF Champions League preliminary stages. Can't remember, it was Moroto or something, So, but I think what they've done now, they got a number of players who play in the lower divisions in France, to come and be behind the team, and we've seen this also working for Madagascar 2 years ago when Madagascar qualified when they qualified to Cairo, remember?
Yeah.
That was the situation. But for Comoros, I think the way, and I think now people have also been talking about Gambia, like you say. Gambia has been a very good project. I was talking to Rido Bedin. Now you know that Rido is also a well-traveled physical conditioner.
Yeah.
He's been with Togo. He qualified with Togo in 2017. In 2012, he qualified with Botswana, which was also making its maiden appearance back then. Now this is his third Afcon, He was also telling the story of how even in the previous qualifiers, they had stood up to Algeria, an Algerian team that went on to win the Afcon tournament 2 years ago. So this, but the story of how these teams got to the Afcon differs, because some of them you find that, yes, take for instance Madagascar. They were there 2 years ago, but they're not there now. And you are going to have those fairy tale stories. But as to whether those teams have got the capacity to return to the Afcon again, it's a different story, because sometimes you find that there's this short route of getting players who grew up in Europe, But I think the story of Gambia and Comoros differs. Comoros have gone this route of getting players who come from that side, but with Gambia they've been building the process. If you look at players like Musa Barrow, who plays for Bologna in
Syria,
and in Italian Serie A, so and their results over the years. So they've been coming up, and now that's why they've even given coach Tom Saintfield that extended his contract for 5 years.
Yeah, which you don't really see on the African continent.
Yes. Because you see, if you look at the story of Nigeria and you look at Jonah Draw, Jonah Draw is now coaching Nigeria for 5 years. This has rarely happened previously with Nigerian coaches, that he can be there for a 5-year period. But with him, that's the case, because it means that they are happy, And you look during this phase, at the last Afcon, they were bronze medalists. I remember, I think it was for 2017, they had failed to qualify for the Afcon. They didn't fire him. You know what he did? He qualified them for the World Cup the following year.
Yeah. So
I know one will be saying maybe they are hoping that's what South Africa can do, But so I you see, what I was trying to say is that on the continent, if you know that maybe your team is not strong enough, your players are not strong enough, at least your bench must be strong enough.
Yeah.
Your bench must be strong enough in terms of the technical team. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's a good point, Velile. And maybe we should just chat on, just to close off, just on, who do you think it's still very early doors, obviously, but do you think who's some of the nations to keep an eye out for at next year's AFCON? I know the qualifying campaign has not even ended yet. I think we still have 4 games on the go as we are chatting right now. But obviously a team like Algeria, defending champions, and just a wealth of experience they have and wealth of talent they have. You think of Senegal, you think of Morocco, who's got, a few players, doing really well, especially 3 players at Sevilla, for example, Hakim Ziyech, who's a high quality player. Who do you think are some of the nations that we should keep an eye out for at next year in Cameroon? Not drifting away from Cameroon as well, who shocked the world, obviously shocked the African continent a few years back when they won against all odds. Who do you think are some of the nations that will stand out at next year's AFCON?
Well. Very interesting. Very interesting call that you want me to make. But I think for me, as things stand, I don't see anyone dethroning the Algerians. Remember, I think they're unbeaten in how many matches now? Is it 20?
Yeah, it's 20-something.
24. Yeah, I think 24 or 25 matches that they are unbeaten in now, And if you look at the way they clobbered Botswana as well yesterday, you can see that this is a team that means business, But obviously, Senegal, I rank them high up there as well. And these were the finalists also. I remember they lost to Algeria in the final 2 years ago. And then Mali will always be there. And I also like how Mali, from time to time, they get to refresh their team. You can see that the success of their junior national teams is always reflected, even in the senior team as well. And they don't miss a moment. They don't miss a moment. I think Mali is one of the few teams, even during these qualifiers, to use 2 teenagers. So for me, when you look at that, and I'm not really sure about Ghana, but Morocco. I think given a chance, Morocco, for me, they will be semi-finalists in Cameroon. And also I'm interested to see what will the Indomitable Lions do at home, because Cameroon is a footballing country. We saw even during CHAN, So I'm very interested in that. But I'm not really sure about Egypt. I see Egypt as a team that depends on the mood of Salah. Maybe there's a bit of over-reliance there on Salah. And I'm also not really sure about Cote d'Ivoire, but I think the Super Eagles, you remember they were bronze medalists in the last competition, and the way they are building up. And remember, most teams will be coming to, in fact, most of the teams that have qualified, they'll be coming from the conclusion of the World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah.
So the World Cup qualifiers, they start with the group stages, and that will be 40 teams, right? That will be playing there. Then only the group winners out of all those groups will go and play in the final playoff of home and away. Then the 5 teams qualify to the World Cup. So by November, we'll know which 5 teams are going to the World Cup. And the Afcon will be starting in 2 months' time. So you can imagine how exciting. We're in for a very exciting program. And for me, with all due respect, I think the 5 teams that will qualify for the World Cup are teams that will be going to the Afcon.
Very exciting indeed, Velile. It's just a real pity as Bafana Bafana supporters, we won't be able to watch our team, but hopefully they can do the business in the World Cup qualifiers. Thanks again for your time, and enjoy your time at home, and happy Easter. And yeah, thanks again for your expertise and your insight. I really enjoy speaking to you and spending time with you, and all the best. Stay safe.
Thank you, AB. I really hope that our team can go out there and redeem themselves and do it for the nation, because Bafana Bafana, we love football. We've always been behind them, but they've disappointed the nation a lot, Yeah. And here, by association, SAFA as well is equally to blame for this downward spiral of our national team.
Yeah, most definitely. On that note, I say goodbye. Thanks, Velile. Thanks again, and all the best. Thank you for listening to Disky Discussions. If you have any questions or guests you'd like me to have on the show, please hit me up at AB_Basson on Twitter or on Instagram. Stay safe, like, subscribe, aware.